What? There's no way a human hand can make that shape. So what exactly is a chord? Simply put, a chord is 3 or more notes played together in a way that sounds pleasing. Of course, you can't just pick any 3 notes at random. There's theory behind it, patterns people have discovered, and centuries of musical experience. And chords aren't unique to the guitar either. Almost every musical instrument uses them. So why do chords sound good? Take the C major chord as an example. Its 3 notes are C, E, and G. Their frequencies are approximately in a 4-5-6 ratio. Because those ratios are so simple and regular, our brains don't have to work as hard to process the sound. Psychologically, that creates a sense of stability, which is why it sounds so pleasing to us. For today's video though, we're only going to focus on reading chord diagrams. We'll leave questions like why chords exist, why they're named the way they are, and how they actually work for future videos. Because to understand those topics, you first need to understand note names and intervals. To understand intervals, you need to understand frequency and tuning systems. And before long, you're talking about how sound waves, the human ear, the brain, and even emotions all work together. If that kind of music theory or even the science of sound interests you, consider subscribing. I'll do my best to break those topics down in future videos. Anyway, let's jump into today's topic, chord diagrams. At first glance, a chord diagram can look pretty confusing. But don't worry, let's break it down. A chord diagram is really just a set of instructions telling you how to play the guitar. So we can divide the information into 2 parts, what your left hand does and what your right hand does. The left hand can be broken down even further, which fingers to use, where to place them, and how to position them. The right hand tells you which strings to play, which strings to avoid, and how to play them. Do you strum them all together, or do you pick them one by one, and what technique should you use? Of course, if you're playing a left-handed guitar, just swap left and right throughout this explanation. Now that we've broken everything down, let's go back to the chord diagram and go through it in that order. To keep the music theory to a minimum, we'll use the most common C major chord for every example today. Let's start with the left hand. First, which fingers do you use? The numbers 1, 2, and 3 are finger numbers. The full numbering system is 1, 2, 3, 4 plus T for the thumb. Yes, some chords actually use your thumb. Some chord diagrams don't include finger numbers at all. Those rely more on the player's experience and muscle memory. If you're just starting out, it's much easier to practice with chord diagrams that include finger numbers. Next, where do you place your fingers? The circles show exactly where your fingers go. For your left hand, position simply means a specific string and a specific fret. There are generally 2 ways chord diagrams are drawn. If the diagram starts at the 1st fret, you usually won't see a fret number on the side. Instead, the thick horizontal line at the top represents the nut, which means the diagram starts from the 1st fret. If the chord starts higher up the neck, the fret number will usually be shown along the side. That said, not every chord diagram follows this convention perfectly. If you ever see both a thick nut line and a fret number, follow the fret number. This also clears up a common beginner misunderstanding. A lot of beginners think every guitar chord starts at the 1st fret. The reason is simple. Most beginner chords happen to be played in the lower positions because they're easier to learn. Another thing to keep in mind, chord diagrams are usually drawn vertically. If that feels awkward at first, you can simply rotate the diagram sideways so it matches the way you're holding the guitar. Now, even after you know which fingers to use and where to put them, there's still one thing beginners often overlook. How should your fingers actually be positioned? For simple chords, you can usually figure it out yourself. But for more difficult shapes like this one, you might wonder, seriously, is my hand really supposed to do that? In cases like this, I'd recommend finding a demonstration video. Pay attention to the finger angles, the wrist position, and how experienced players apply pressure. Now let's move on to the right hand. The easiest part is figuring out which strings you should and shouldn't play. There are 3 possibilities. If a string has a finger placed on it, obviously you play that string. If there's an open circle above the string, that means you play it as an open string. And if there's an X above the string, don't play that string. So why are some strings played while others are muted? It comes back to what a chord actually is. You can think of a chord as an agreed upon combination of notes that sounds good together. Adding extra notes can change the sound or even make it clash. That's why chord diagrams clearly tell you which strings to include and which ones to avoid. Take this C major chord as an example. The fretted notes, together with the allowed open strings, all produce the notes C, E, and G, which make up a C major chord. Some of you might have noticed something interesting. The open 6th string is also an E. If E belongs to the C major chord, why aren't we allowed to play it? This is where the idea of the root note comes in. The open 6th string E is lower than the C on the 5th string. In a root position C major chord, the lowest note should be C, because that's what gives the chord its stable, balanced sound. That's why the 6th string is marked with an X. Don't worry if that doesn't make complete sense yet. We'll cover root notes in a future video. Now we know which strings to play. The next question is, how should we play them? Should we strum them all at once, or pick them one note at a time? Without tablature, there are usually two common approaches: block chords and arpeggios. On guitar, these generally correspond to strumming and fingerpicking. And once you start fingerpicking, you'll often hear another term, picking patterns. Strumming is pretty straightforward. You can check out my previous video about guitar tabs if you want to learn more about strumming notation. Picking patterns, on the other hand, are common rhythmic patterns that guitarists use over and over again. Of course, if your chord diagram comes with guitar tabs, then the tabs will tell you exactly what your right hand should do. That also answers a question many beginners have. Why don't chord diagrams show the right hand technique? The answer is simple. Either the tablature already tells you, or the rhythm follows a common strumming or picking pattern. Before we finish, let's answer a few common beginner questions. First, if a triad only has 3 notes, why can we play 5 or even 6 strings? Because a triad only defines 3 note names, not which octaves those notes have to be in. You can repeat the same notes in different octaves and it still sounds like the same chord, just with a slightly different color. Second, why are there so many different chord diagrams for C major? The answer is different octave arrangements create different textures and emotions, even though they're all still C major chords. That's why some voicings are common in jazz, while others are more common in pop or country music. And finally, do chords always have 3 notes? Not at all. There are 4-note chords, 5-note chords, and even chords with more notes than that. As for why a 4-note chord is called a 7th chord, or why a 5-note chord is called a 9th chord, we'll save that for a future video. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.